Hello everybody, it's Rabbi Lister here with another evening story, and this one is about Rabbi Yechezkel Landau, who is known by the name of his most famous work, the Noda B'Yehuda, which is a work about answering questions in Jewish law. And the Noda B'Yehuda was a rabbi who lived in Prague, which is now the capital of the Czech Republic, and he lived there just over 200 years ago. Well, the story goes that when he was a younger man, he was learning Torah there one evening, and he heard the sound of crying coming from his front door. He opened his front door to investigate, and there he found the baker's boy sitting on his doorstep in floods of tears. He asked the little boy what the matter was, and the little boy told him that his father, the baker, had sent him out with a tray of cakes that he had to sell, and he had to bring the money back to his father. But the boy had dropped the cakes, and they'd all got spoiled in the mud of the streets, and now he couldn't sell them anymore, and he was afraid to go back home because he knew that his father would be very cross and would beat him. Well, the Noda B'Yehuda, being a nice man, wanted to help him, and he asked him how much money he would have got for selling the cakes. And when the little boy told him, the Noda B'Yehuda gave him the money and told him to go home and give the money to his father. The little boy was overjoyed at this and went on his way. Years later, the bakers in the city of Prague got together and they decided to hatch a plot against the Jewish people because some of the people in Prague didn't like the Jewish people. And the bakers decided that they would find a way to poison all the Jewish people in Prague. It was a terrible idea. What they wanted to do was put poison in the bread. And they knew that the day after Pesach, all the Jewish people would go to the bakeries to buy bread. And in those days, the Jewish people didn't have their own special Jewish bakery. There were arrangements in place, which meant that the Jewish people could buy kosher bread from the regular bakeries used by everybody else. And the bakers decided that on the morning after Pesach, they would put poison in the bread and cause a terrible amount of trouble and sadness for the Jewish people of Prague. Well, this was the plot, and the Jewish people celebrating Pesach knew nothing about it until a young man went to the Noda B'Yehuda's door, and he knocked on the door, and the Noda B'Yehuda, who was now an old man, came out to greet this young man on his doorstep, and he asked him what he could do for him. And the young man said to him, "My father is a baker. Many years ago, when I was a little boy, I came to you, and I was very upset because I dropped my father's cakes, and you gave me the money that I would have made from selling the cakes, and you saved me from a beating. And now I'm coming to repay that favor to you. I heard my father saying he was going to put poison in the bread that would be sold in the bakeries on the day after Pesach. And I don't want you to tell anybody that I'm telling you, because if my family or my friends find out, I will be in terrible danger. But I just wanted to let you know in case you can do anything about it." And with that, the young man ran off. Well, the Noda B'Yehuda didn't know what to do. He wanted to warn all the Jewish community not to eat the bread. But if he did so, then perhaps people would find out what had been told to him, and this young man would get into trouble, and he didn't want to do that. So in the end, the Noda B'Yehuda came up with a clever idea. And on the last day of Pesach, he got up in his shul and he said, "Jewish people of Prague, there's been a mistake in the calculation of our calendar, and we all celebrated Pesach one day too early. So instead of today being the last day of Pesach, it's actually the second to last day of Pesach. So nobody must go to the bakeries to buy bread. We have to keep the laws of Pesach for an extra day." Well, of course, all the Jewish people in Prague had tremendous respect for the Noda B'Yehuda, and if he said that Pesach was to be another day, they were quite happy to accept that. So they all went home and they celebrated Pesach for another day. Meanwhile, the Noda B'Yehuda went to the chief of police and asked him to investigate the dough that would be in the bakeries on the day of after Pesach as it really was. Well, the police investigated the bakeries. They found out about the poisoned dough, and they were able to solve this plot, and they could also arrest the criminals who were involved. And the Noda B'Yehuda was able to save the Jewish community of Prague, not only with his wisdom on the last day of Pesach, but also with the kindness that he'd done to a little boy many years before. Thanks for listening. Stay safe.